Stefán Jónasson ritstjóri Lögbergs Heimskringlu. Það blað sem gefið út í Vesturheimi og mjög merka langa sögu. Hann prestur í söfnuði Unitara, merkilegu söfnuður, og hann hefur reyndar verið virkur í pólitík í Winnipeg í sínum heimabæ, hefur verið í fyrirlestrarferð hérna á Íslandi. Stefán Jónasson, welcome to Silfrið. You are the editor, present editor of Lögberg Heimskringlu. Of course, this is a very venerable institution. It used to be two newspapers, but now it's one, and it dates back to the 19th century.
It was the first of the two papers. Heimskringla was founded in 1886, which makes our paper the second oldest Icelandic publication in the world.
Yes, and of course, it was a very important venue for at that time, Iceland really had two cities. It was Reykjavik, but then Winnipeg, and even the journalists went back and forth, and the editors and the political personalities.
Absolutely. It's interesting to look at the history of both papers. Heimskringla was conservative in Canadian politics, democratic in United States politics, and supported the Home Rule Party here in Iceland. By contrast, Lögberg supported the Liberal Party in Canada, the Republican Party in the United States, and the Independence Party here in Iceland. So the editors reflected the general political ferment of the time. They also weighed in on religion. You know, Heimskringla was Unitarian predominantly, and Lögberg was predominantly Lutheran.
Then the papers merged, and they are still living.
They merged, they're still living. We try not to be as controversial, so we eschew political topics. We try to do mostly only friendly articles about religion, and to avoid controversy. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but for the most part we try to present a positive face of Iceland and Icelanders in North America.
But you are a political person. You've
Absolutely.
been involved in politics. And you're a Unitarian priest. And the Unitarians, of course, were very much at odds with the Lutherans, the evangelists.
Right. I was, I suppose, a risky choice to be the new editor when I was selected a couple of years ago now, 2.5 years ago. I'm the third Unitarian minister to actually serve as editor of one of the papers. But I think there was a little concern that maybe I'd bring too much religion into it, and because my politics leaned distinctly to the left, there was probably also a little concern that I might bring more politics into the paper, and truth be told, I've done both.
You have?
Yes. We try to be fair, you know, so I recognize my biases as an editor, and I try to make sure that we cover the religious communities fairly, that we cover political life fairly. But for a very long period of time, the paper was so afraid of controversy that we actually weren't covering important aspects of the Icelandic community, either here or in North America. And it struck me that it was important for us to actually deal with the whole of Icelandic life and not just a piece of it. And that means a little religion, a little politics, and other controversial topics.
Why were these religious debates so heated? You can even talk about, in some communities, almost religious wars, when people didn't want to be buried in the same cemeteries as their opponents from the other side.
And in Gimli, the cemeteries were side by side, and there was a barbed wire fence in between them until the 1940s, when some radical students decided to tear the fence down. You know, in those early years, there was a sense in which the church was the only distinctive Icelandic organization among the Icelandic immigrants. And I think there was a real fear that if they allowed the church to be divided into two, that in fact the community would divide into two. That didn't happen, but they couldn't know when the controversies were beginning.
But tell me, you have been giving these lectures about Icelanders and the Canadian mosaic.
Yes.
Mosaic, it's a very important term in Canada.
Absolutely. The United States is characterized as a melting pot. And so their whole idea of welcoming immigrants is to eventually melt them down into Americans, and to kind of embrace a common sense of national identity. In Canada, we've opted for the metaphor of the mosaic, that people can come from various places in the world, settle in Canada, and yet maintain their ancestral identities and maintain a variety of cultures. That a land as large as Canada is a land that's big enough to have more than one culture thrive within it. And part of that, I think, is grounded in the fact that Canada itself, in the beginning, brought together the British colonies and the French colony of Quebec. Yeah. So we were bilingual from the beginning. Sadly, we ignored the indigenous people for too long, but yes, eventually we came to understand that they were also a part of that multicultural mosaic.
But so Canada is really the multicultural country in the world?
I think so. If you were to think of any country in the world that was a kind of a miniature of the United Nations, I believe that Canada would be that country.
And you have the Charter of the Canadian Charter of Human Rights.
Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Rights and Freedom, which was written by, well, Trudeau's government in,
That's right,
in the 70s, right?
The first Trudeau.
Yeah, the first Trudeau. Is that an important document?
It's become vitally important. I think that when it was first crafted, you know, it was enacted in 1982. When it was first crafted, I don't think we fully understood how important a document that it was going to become. But it has in the intervening years become a cherished part of our history, and it's truly a defining document.
Well, Canada has a very good image as, well, the leader of the free world now.
We hear that more and more. Yeah. We compete with Angela Merkel's Germany today, I think, for the title. But certainly as a country that still argues in favor of international trade that's largely unfettered, Canada has occupied that role as a country that's welcoming to refugees and understands that we have a responsibility to welcome the stranger. I think Canada has become a leader in that regard, so that we maintain a set of liberal values that we thought other countries were once the most cherished defenders of that. And I think increasingly it's becoming apparent that Canada has become one of the leading defenders of liberal values.
How do Canadians feel, well, looking over the border to the U.S.? You live just one hour from
yes,
the U.S., really.
We live 1 hour from the U.S. and in Winnipeg from a huge assembly of United States anti-ballistic missiles that are situated in North Dakota. I think we have, in Canada, become more fearful of the United States than we have in the past, and we worry about the direction that the United States is taking under its current administration.
Yes. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Can I elaborate? The current administration, to me, and I'm speaking personally here, not on behalf of all Icelanders in North America, but the current administration in the United States just feels more unhinged than previous administrations have been. You know, when the Republicans were in power under the two Bushes or under Ronald Reagan, we knew that there was a certain ideology that was driving the direction of government, but it was still within the normal range of Western liberal democracies. When the Democrats were in power, for many of us on the left, even they weren't quite satisfactory, but we knew that they had a certain ideology that guided the direction of their affairs. And again, it was within the broad consensus of the liberal democracies. I don't perceive that there is a clear ideology that governs the current administration other than bravado on the one hand, and the desire to allow wealthy people to claim even a greater share of the nation's wealth than in the past. So there is just a kind of, it feels to me like a certain recklessness and unpredictability about the current administration.
Stefan, maybe we should connect closer to Canada here in Iceland. Do you think so? That we can
Absolutely.
have closer ties?
Absolutely. I'll tell you, one of the things that breaks my heart is when I hear some of the politicians in this country who can occasionally be a little dismissive of closer ties with Canada. So, you know, when discussions about whether or not the kroner should be tied to the Canadian dollar came up, politicians on both the left and the right scoffed at the idea. And yet our economies are remarkably similar in terms of their resource base. And Iceland could do worse than to tie its currency to the Canadian dollar. Now, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not. What I do know is that the Canadian dollar might be as valuable to Iceland as the euro, or tying to the British pound or the US dollar. And so occasionally when I hear politicians scoff, it hurts a little bit. I think that Canada could have a much greater role in Iceland's air defense. Here we are, we're your nearest North American neighbor, if we discount the Danes in Greenland. We're your nearest North American neighbor, and in many ways it would be natural, it seems to me, for Canada to take a leading role in the air defense of Iceland, rather than the sort of ad hoc structure that you have now. And there are ties really in every province, business ties between Iceland and Canada, and I do think they could be stronger. And of course, naturally, cultural ties could be much stronger.
Stefán Jónasson, thank you for coming to the program.
It's been wonderful to be here and to see you again. Thank you.